introducing this reading tonight, it's because he's part of the lineup. He will be reading from his novel that was launched last year, titled Fishhead, A Republic of Want. Our other excellent writers are Allison Epstein, Sara Connell, and Esther Yin-Ling Spodek. And any last name that I have mispronounced, I apologize. I just want to give a huge thank you to the writers for being here tonight, sharing their work with us. And I also want to thank everyone who's joining us as our audience. You've taken the time to do this, and we really appreciate it. So now I'm going to introduce Esther Yin-Ling Spodek. And then you, Esther, you can tell me if I'm mispronouncing your...
You're pronouncing it perfectly.
Okay, good. All right. So Esther Yin-Ling Spodek, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and raised in Champaign, Illinois, Esther Yin-Ling Spodek taught the Survivors Writing Workshop at the Illinois Holocaust Museum and edited the book that came from that workshop, published by the museum. From that word in Our Voices, it's called In Our Voices. Sorry. She has been a scholar at the Salon Writers Conference and a fellow at the Virginia Center for Creative Arts. She has worked as an editor at the Indiana Review and Other Voices. Her most recent short story appeared in the Hamilton Stone Review, and her novel, We Have Everything Before Us, is published by Gibson House Press. She blogs at estherspodek.com and makes book recommendations on her Facebook site, Esther Yin-Ling Spodek. Esther, it's great to have you with us, and it's all yours. Okay.
Thank you, Natalia, and thank you, Ignatius, too, and everybody at the Sunday Salon for having me here. I'm going to read from my novel, which was released a year ago. We Have Everything Before Us. It's a suburban novel. I heard this term coined recently on Twitter. It's about the Chicago suburbs. Most of the characters are from there, though two of them are not. It's about families and an internet romance and people who are incredibly bored and do really stupid things to try to relieve their boredom. I'm going to start with a scene from one of the main characters' lives, Eleanor, about what it's like to eat dinner with her family. Eleanor has a recurring dream. She is living single in an apartment with no children, and she hasn't had a date in 10 years. In the dream, all of this is normal. She has this dream in the very early hours of the morning after an evening when her oldest son said to her, "All I want out of life is to have a day when you don't talk to me." This was after Eleanor had asked, "How was your day?" She asks this always in the friendliest way that she can, half knowing that she is baiting Eugene and half wanting to set a positive mood. Last night, Liam, his younger brother, said to him from the back seat of the car, "What do you want? To live alone the rest of your life?" Which seemed like a genuine question, not something to annoy his brother. "Yes, that's what I want," Eugene answered. "It's tough living alone, Eugene," Liam told him. Eleanor supposed that for Eugene, living alone would mean that you did not have anyone to clean your room, to shop for your food, or to cook your meals. It meant, in essence, that life with home help was over. But Eleanor chose not to insert her opinions into this conversation. She suspected that Eugene would have a smart-ass answer to anything she said. The next evening, while putting out place settings on the kitchen island and taking dinner out of the oven, she muses that she will never have the life of her single woman fantasy. She only has to look around to realize this. Over homemade macaroni and cheese, Liam asks, "Is there anything else?" Eleanor is standing on the opposite side of the island, which produces an unfortunate diner waitress effect. Frank, from the customer side, says generously to Liam, "Check the freezer for chicken nuggets." Chicken nuggets are never on Eleanor's list. There are some things Frank buys when he occasionally goes to the supermarket on a weekend to help out, when he comes home with only processed frozen foods and fizzy drinks. Eleanor breathes in deeply and counts to 3. "No," she says to Liam. "They aren't on the menu tonight. You will eat what I've made for everyone." She knows that homemade macaroni and cheese is Eugene's favorite and not Liam's, and that when Frank allows Liam to eat something else, there are leftovers that no one will want for lunch the next day, but not enough for a family meal. Frank always wants meat for lunch, and the boys want peanut butter. Why, Frank asks, he has to eat something. It's too much for Eleanor to explain her thoughts to him. "I'm not a short order cook," she says, an irony from where she is standing on the service side of the island. She puts down the spoon she has been holding and wipes her hands on her jeans before moving to the end of the island where her place is set. She is angry, but trying to hold on to a calm yen in front of the boys. Still, Frank continues as though he does not suspect the depth of his wife's anger. "Yogurt, bagels, scramble yourself some eggs." And then to Eleanor, "He won't ask you to make it for him. He'll do it for himself." Liam watches his father, then his mother, and says nothing. Eugene serves himself a second helping. Eleanor feels relieved that the leftover situation won't be as bad as she thought. "That's not the point," she says to Frank. "No, there was the extra trip to the supermarket, the effort put into making the dish, and being there so that it comes out of the oven on time. She will clean the encrusted pan afterward, when the boys have scattered to do homework and Frank is nowhere to be found. She could have made it from a box, but she doesn't do that sort of thing. It is, however, the sort of thing Frank does without a thought, and she struggles to think of how to make her sons appreciate the difference." Liam gets up from his chair before she can explain her point to him, and before she can stop him or convince his father that more explicitly not to undermine her authority. Eleanor feels her defeat in the sound of the eggs Liam cracks with alarming skill. She feels left behind. "It's not dinner, it's breakfast," he says, "but I can take care of myself." Liam is in middle school, and the older one, Eugene, is in high school. The next scene I'm going to read is after Eleanor and Phil, her high school crush, have reacquainted themselves over the internet, and they've been emailing. And Phil comes into town to see his daughter sing at a club and invites Eleanor, who brings a friend. And Eleanor's almost ex-wife shows up along with her mother-in-law, along with his mother-in-law. And so Eleanor is thinking about this. Eleanor is sleepy from the 2 glasses of wine she drank at lunch. She wouldn't call herself drunk, tipsy maybe. At home on the computer, she writes, "Phil, what happened the other night? Why so many members of your soon-to-be estranged family? My girlfriend thinks that you and I are going to sleep together. In fact, she's convinced of it. I told her that this would be impossible because I am married to Frank and absorbed in the lives of my kids." She stops typing and thinks about her lunch with Kay at the plaza near the lake. They sat at tables on a sidewalk patio where they could see the lake between the high-rise condos across Sheridan Road, high-rise by Wilmette standards. "It isn't completely out of the range of possibility," she continues to write. I'm 48, but I exercise to keep fit and I color my hair to hide the gray. I'm not unattractive. Sometimes I want to ask my husband, honey, do you think I'm still attractive? But he would look at me and say, you might as well ask me if I think you're fat. What am I supposed to say? Isn't there more than just how you look, Phil? Pheromones, perhaps, or animal magnetism? Do you sense this about me? Am I magnetic? At lunch, Eleanor and Kay had both ordered sandwiches, gazpacho, and white wine. And before their drinks even arrived, Kay had said, what the heck was that all about? Referring to the meeting with Phil. Who brings his family to see his old girlfriend? Eleanor had replied that she was not Phil's old girlfriend. We were just friends. Now she deletes the email and begins again. Phil, do you really have lawyers putting your divorce together? Kay had rolled her eyes when Eleanor explained once again that Phil's wife was living in the same house while she looked for her own. Why is your wife living with you if she has left you? And don't tell me it's to save money. Is your divorce really happening? Eleanor types, you know, she emailed me, your wife, the other day, sort of a territory marking activity, I would say. And then she adds, like my dog would do. Just as the sun became hot over their bacon, lettuce, and tomato, Eleanor had explained to Kay, I didn't realize we'd go to a club, watch his kids sing, and then go out to eat afterwards with his wife and mother-in-law. She wonders how she may have misread Phil's signals, that after the 20 minutes of hearing his daughter play in the club, should she have taken Kay and gone home? Did we do something wrong? She asked Kay. Kay had answered her, remember my idea to go as your lesbian girlfriend to your high school reunion? I do, Eleanor replied, and I really shouldn't listen to you. Your wife, she writes to Phil, wants me to leave you alone. She says you have had many women and that you feel that you leave a trail of them behind you. This doesn't seem like the Phil I remember, whose parents remained married while their children were in high school, who dated the same girl for 2 long years, even went to college with her before breaking up. Now I wonder myself why I'm getting involved with someone like this. Please convince me that there are no other women friends. Why would your wife lie to me? I can think of many reasons why she would, but with nothing going on between us now, why does she even care? She says that she is praying for me. Delete. Phil, there is nothing I hate more than a woman who says she is praying for me. I don't think of myself as the kind of person who needs to be prayed over. I thought I was a helpful sort of person. I used to volunteer at my kids' school for hours a week. Then I got burned out. I am burned out from being a wife. Delete, delete. Kay's voice is in the back of Eleanor's head. Their lunch conversation had become heated. You do not want to sleep with him. You do so want to sleep with him. And why not? He's a Norse god. Eleanor had answered somewhat too seriously, that's not enough, Kay. She types, no one I know seems to pay attention to me the way that you do. If you would only say that all you really want is to sleep with me, then I would feel good psychologically, and then we wouldn't actually have to do it. Again, delete. Eleanor tries to think about the last time Frank wanted her spontaneously rather than out of necessity. She tries to think of the last time she wanted Frank, or when she wanted someone other than Phil. She comes up blank. Dear Phil, how is your garden? Have any good vegetables ripened yet? I have never had a garden here. The house is 100 years old, and I have learned that there's lead paint in the soil around it and that it takes centuries to biodegrade. So we only have flowers and the dog tramples them over. The yard looks terrible. There are kicked up piles of dirt along the path where she runs. Still, I'm having a cookout dinner party in the yard next weekend Will you come? Press send. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. I can't wait to read the book and find out what happens.
Oh, thanks a lot.
My name's Betsy. I'll put the link to where to buy Esther's book in the chat for everyone. Thank you so much for reading.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to introduce our next reader, our next author, which is Allison Epstein. She is the author of A Tip for the Hangman, a historical thriller that was named one of Chicago Tribune's top 25 most anticipated books of 2021. She recently completed her MFA in fiction at Northwestern University, where she received the 2020 Distinguished Thesis Award for Creative Writing. A native Michigander, and proud Chicago transplant, Allison works as an editor for a philanthropic consulting firm. She has a website, AllisonEpstein.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Rapscallion for hot takes about ancient popes. I look forward to hearing you read, Allison.
Thanks, Betsy. I'm sorry I gave you so many 5-syllable words in my bio. I didn't do that on purpose. Yeah, thanks to Natalia for inviting me to read today. I'm really, really excited to be here. I'm going to read a short-ish chapter from my book, A Tip for the Hangman. It's a little ways into the book, so just a little bit of context. This book is about the Elizabethan poet Kit Marlowe. He lived at about the same time as Shakespeare, wrote plays in what we think of now as the Shakespearean style. But the fun fact about Kit Marlowe is that historians also believe he was a spy for Queen Elizabeth I. And so that's what my book is about. It's about, if Christopher Marlowe was actually a spy, what would his spy adventures have been like, and what would be the toll that took on him personally. So the chapter that I'm going to read for you is right toward the beginning, where Kit is kind of getting involved in his first spy mission. And we hear about kind of his entrance on the scene from somebody else's perspective. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and read from that chapter. The dense rain pounded the parlor window until Ann Cooper couldn't see more than a few feet beyond Sheffield Manor. A chill seeped to her seat near the door, which made her think there must be a crack somewhere between the window and the wall. How these poorly built estates weathered the generations she didn't know. But then she had better things to think about than the history of the English manor. Anne's hands were intent upon the knitting she'd taken up half an hour ago, moving independently of her attention. That remained on Thomas Morgan, who sat at the desk beneath the window composing a letter. The snap of the hearth underscored the sound of his pen. If only she could glean the words he wrote from the scratching on the page. From the couch, Mary sighed. "You must be nearly finished, Thomas," she said. Her accent, from a childhood spent at the French court, which despite everything she made no effort to shake, imbued the words with yet more exasperation. "Nearly, madam," Morgan said. He did not look up. "Tell him he is long overdue," Mary said. She sat up straighter to impart her own urgency into Morgan's writing. "Tell him I do not intend to wait by the fireside, embroidering handkerchiefs and waiting for the axe." Anne looked at her mistress, surprised. Mary, Queen of Scots, had strong cause to expect persecution, but she had never yet proclaimed without prompting that she feared her own death. Morgan set aside the letter. Anne imagined he meant his expression to be reassuring, but his temperament was ill-suited for comfort. "You're safe here, madam," he said. "Rest easy." Not for the first time, Anne wondered how Morgan rose to prominence in Mary's household when he couldn't tell a lie to save his life. "I do not want you to speak in platitudes," Mary said. "I want you to write to him. If you will not, I will do it myself." Chastised, Morgan nearly upended his inkwell in his haste to resume the letter. "Remind him," Mary said, "that Dante wrote about a special circle of hell for traitors, and that if he proves incapable, I can find others to take his place." Anne was so much part of the fabric of life at Sheffield that Mary and Morgan had forgotten she sat near them. Listening had long since taken precedence over knitting, and her socks suffered the consequences. She had dropped several stitches 10 rows ago, and the sock now shrank at a diagonal. But what did that matter when Mary spoke the word traitor? Was this only irrational suspicion or a real threat bearing down on the house? Instead of pressing the point, Morgan set down the pen again and glanced toward the door. "Madam," he said. Anne, turning her listening ear outward, heard the footsteps as well. "Yes," Mary said, "I am expecting someone tonight." "Quite right, madam." There could have been a murderer in the hall, and Morgan would have said, "Quite right, madam." Anne hadn't yet decided whether Mary's confidant suffered from an excess of political ambition or a shortage of spine. "Anne, if you would," Mary said. If given the choice between supporting her mistress against threats of betrayal and playing porter, Anne would have let the visitor find his own way through Sheffield. But she'd been given an order, not a choice. She rose and ducked from the room. The manor's entryway was elegant, Castilian marble floors and wood paneling along the walls. It, like Mary, belonged better in a Venetian palazzo than here, 3 miles from a village rife with pigs and straw and shit. It was a manor fit for a queen, even a displaced one, which made this shivering man dripping mud on the marble seem painfully out of place. A young man, slim in a way suggesting poverty, with short brown hair soaking wet against his forehead. He smelled of horse and rain and something that might have been incense, but was more likely tobacco. Anne frowned. She knew enough of the world to make distinctions among men. There was an air, a way of standing, a habit of dress that united all respectable people, and this man didn't have it. A man like this had no business calling on a steward. He shook the water from his hair like a dog out of the rain. Anne's scowl deepened. "What's your business in Sheffield, sir?" she asked. "So this is Sheffield. Excellent." He flashed her a grin. Liking him less by the second, she didn't return it. "It's impossible to tell where you're going in weather like this. I was worried I'd ended up in Southampton." "Your business," she said, this time without the sir. "This is the Earl of Shrewsbury's manor, home to Mary Stuart, isn't it?" Anne nodded. No use denying that, although she didn't trust the man's habit of answering questions with another question. "I've been sent as a footman to her ladyship. I believe I'm expected." This was possible. The Privy Council arranged the bulk of Mary's staff, filling it with cowards and sycophants who could pose no threat. But no savvy London politician would dispatch this insolent madman. She scanned him as subtly as she could, and while she saw no weapons, an assassin could hide a knife any number of places. She couldn't dismiss him. There was a chance he meant what he said. And Mary expected him. There was a chance he was only who he claimed to be. But Anne had no intention of letting her guard down. These were dangerous times. Mary wasn't the only one with reason to fear. Anne gestured toward the parlor. "The lady is within, Master Marlowe, Kit Marlowe, at your service, mistress, in any way you might want." He winked, and Anne understood everything at once. By the Virgin, was that all this was? Not an assassin, just a fool who didn't know where his flirtation wasn't wanted. Men. Every time. She opened the door and preceded him into the room. Mary watched them enter with interest. Morgan barely mustered a glance in their direction. "Christopher Marlowe, madam," Anne said, taking her previous seat near the door. Let Marlowe cope with Mary as best he could. She almost hoped he'd try his would-be seduction on her mistress. It would be the last thing he did on this earth. Marlowe stood some feet short of Mary, so as not to drip mud on the carpet. Anne watched him, first with disdain, then with shock. She must have blinked and missed some change, one actor substituting for another. This wasn't the arrogant rake she'd met in the hall. He'd metamorphosed, somehow, into an aristocrat's perfect servant. His every step spoke deference, every breath an apology. "My lady," Marlowe bowed, "I apologize for my lateness and my, well," he made a self-conscious gesture toward his sodden clothes. "Marlowe," Mary said, "I blame you for neither your lateness nor your wetness. I would ask if you had a pleasant journey," she added, nodding toward the deluge outside, "but it seems evident you have not." "The rain did slow me, madam, but it wouldn't stop me." Well done, Anne thought, transforming lateness into a sign of dedication, shortcomings into virtues. Someone had taught this man well. "I'm glad to hear it," Mary said. "You may retire to the servants' quarters on the 3rd floor. Master Beaton, my chamberlain, will direct you in the morning." She wrinkled her nose. A bath, I think, may be in order before then. Marlowe ducked his head, choosing gratitude over offense. Thank you, my lady. With your permission? A small smile passed across Mary's lips. She waved a hand, granting him leave. Marlowe inclined his head at Morgan, whose terse, unwelcoming silence was an art form in itself. Then he swept a final bow, striking the perfect balance of circumspection and extravagance, and left the room. Morgan could learn one thing from this Kit Marlowe, Anne thought. The man was the best liar she'd ever seen. She liked him better for it, and did not necessarily trust him less. A skilled liar could be either a friend or a risk, depending on whom he lied for. Either way, he was worth watching. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love that we've gone from the Chicago suburbs to, Elizabethan England in the span of half an hour. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, wow, that's so great. I thank you, Allison, for reading. I am going to be introducing our third writer of the evening, Sara Connell. And she is a best-selling author and has been featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Good Morning America, The View, Fox Chicago, NPR, Katie Couric, and TEDx. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Forbes, Tri-Quarterly, and other publications. Her memoir, Bringing in Finn, was nominated for Elle Magazine Book of the Year. Please welcome Sara.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Betsy. Thank you so much, Natalia and Ignatius, for inviting me. I'm so honored. And here I'm a grad with Allison in my writing cohort from Northwestern's MFA program. So it was really exciting to read together. I have a forthcoming book. So it is on pages still, but it's a short story collection of in the magical realism speculative tradition. So I'm going to read 2 short pieces that are in the book. And we'll this first one I've read once before. It's the only thing you need to know is that it's told from the point of view of a neon sign over a bar. So here we go. It's called Raise Girls, Girls, Girls. The boy sees me through the slit of his taxi window, a glowing vision bolted to the wall above the bar's entrance. His mother turns his face away. What's Raise Girls, Girls, Girls? He asks, stretching his neck backwards as they whip down Wabash. She speaks slowly, drawing out the syllables. Objectification. For the rest of the day, she steams. Cooking cauliflower and fillets of salmon for supper, she can't help thinking about any underage girls Ray might employ at his establishment, and if they work there of their own free will, or if, oh God, any of them have been picked up on the street in Green Bay and branded with thorn tattoos and shot up with dope and bussed into the city like the girls in that horrifying interview she listened to last week. Reading to her son in bed, his body all organic and milky sweet, she thinks of me again, a voluptuous tangle of creamy glass tubes, pulsing white thighs, blue hair, a pointy green bikini top that hides nothing, a lurid array as she saw me, lit through with colored lights, even at 11 a.m., proving that the darkness never sleeps, but glows always, even in the sunlight. The woman cries in the shower that night and doesn't have sex with her husband for a week in protest, in distress, in rage, in vigil for the girls. The boy saw me shabbier than I have been, my body now like an aging glowworm. When I first went up, oh my. The man walked by after I was drilled into the cement wall, tripped over his loafers. The younger ones came in packs to look at me and point. Older ones, barely men, middle-aged men in suits with rounding bellies, old men with white whiskers and hair in their ears, walking from their offices or condos, pretending to be on their way somewhere else. My technology was new and exciting to them all. My presence, neon charged, glass, alive enough to make their pants twitch. Women come alone, wearing belted coats and scarves around their faces and large, dark glasses holding secrets. They pretend to look at the menu of the German restaurant next door to Ray's. Bratwurst, schnitzel, Käsespätzle, sausages in the menu photos so long and juicy the women get horny looking at the pictures. Make them want me like they want you, they whisper, their faces pressed against the concrete. They leave mascara prints on the wall like stenciled love notes. Ray's older and more cracked than I am now. For his 80th birthday, everyone ordered a cake with my picture on the top. The girls wear silver sequin hot pants and green cone bras, and Ray cries. He is touched. His tears come out like silver, like the girls' hot pants. And this is what happens when you kiss one of Ray's girls. Your blood turns purple. Your saliva goes glitter. Ray looks far worse for his age, the men tell him. He's taken better care of me, his muse, his goddess. There's change afoot, the men report. A woman may be mayor. The woman becomes the mayor. She used to stomp in all those marches the women held to protest people like me. She does not like Ray's girls, girls, girls. She remembers the great storms, the rubber soles of her boots, the only thing between her and electrocution. She pulls out the old yellowed petition that she promised she would sign if she ever achieved this office. She's not anti-sex, she says from the tiny microphone where it amplifies to the fascia of phones around the city. Ray's board of directors fight back. Free speech is free speech. Dancing's not illegal. There's a lot more than dancing that goes on at Ray's Girls, 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 but this woman will not be victorious. I have a right to exist. An army of women cannot remove me. The woman from the taxi with her son signs the new mayor's petition on Facebook. She feels better and reaches for her husband's arm in bed. She pulls him and lets him enter. I will see her son again, she knows, as she washes her face in the bathroom after. She can see him a few years out, tall and broad and a little insecure still, walking sideways to my wall, approaching consciously like a pilgrim. And where are my sisters? Some of the new customers ask Ray. It's girls, 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 not girl after all. They stop in at the bar where Ray sits and drinks whiskey neat, and the bartender stacks up American beer and watered down martinis with small green olives on a stick. Ray says I pack enough women for them all. Back arched like a yogi, neck stretched long and inviting, a bite or a kiss. Short so short you could blink and miss them. Toenails painted 50s housewife red. The men knock their drinks on the bar and move into the mouth of the place. I'm the first thing he bought when he opened. All you have to do is get him in the door. He laughs at the fools on this same street who own the fine dining restaurants and art galleries. $20,000 paintings, $200 dinners, when next door they can have liquor and sex for almost nothing. And what about the girls at Ray's Girls, Girls, Girls? A man in town for a trade show wonders. Are they really so special? He says as he wades through the tables toward the stage. Magnificent. Girls with pink hair, green hair, purple. Not the millennial lavender tints young women wear now. The girls' hair grows neon. Some effective lightning. Their skin, every shade, soft as cashmere, smooth as lollipops. They're otherworldly, but kind, accessible. The men can talk to these women before they peel off their bikini tops and gossamer thongs. They give them good trading and business advice. But who are these women? No one sees them come in. No one sees them go out. The men try, but never a one will meet outside Ray's. The regulars joke that the back of Ray's Girls, Girls, Girls is a portal to an alternate universe, one where the female species is superior to human women in every way. One day, the woman with her son takes the same street that the taxi took on accident, she tells herself, as if she's driving in a whiteout, not able to see 2 feet in front of her. My street, the only street she can traverse. I forgot, she thinks about Ray's Girls, 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 and my plump behind and my lovely shoulders and all the angles pointing down, down, down to the crease in my short, short green shorts. She didn't forget. I stalk her dreams now. So that's the first story. And then I have the other short one. Let me just make sure I have it right here. Just make sure. Okay, so this is called Tarifa. I don't think we need any introduction here. My mother told me this story only on the rare occasions when my father traveled for work, when she would take out a bottle of Drambuie only when it rained. We were 3 girls, my mother starts, on a road somewhere between Marbella and Tarifa, where a friend Seneca, who lived in Spain, said we would camp for the week. We were 18, away from our parents for the first time. This was before cell phones, the internet. Americans were faceless, untracked tourists who bought Euro passes and slept in hostels for $5 a day. We wanted to take a bus, but Seneca said, why should we pay money when we could ride for free? Hitchhiking is done all the time in Spain, she said. The boys we'd met up with in Malaga had taken motorbikes and said they'd meet us at the campground. Drivers always stop for girls, they said. Esther was shorter and small-breasted and seemed the most put out about the hitchhiking. She still played role-playing games and staged martial art battles with the nerdy boys in our high school, carried around trading cards featuring girls with wild hair and lightning coming out of their hands or riding dragons. At each city we visited, she bought a glass figurine of a different female saint: Aurelius, a Natalia, Casilda of Toledo, Columb of Spain. Her backpack looked like a doll emporium, and it was so heavy sometimes I took a turn to give Esther a break. The figures were 6 inches tall and made of heavy milk glass, and Casilda had broken somewhere on the train from Madrid to Marbella, and the glass was jagged enough to cut a vein, but even though Esther had wrapped her in a swim team t-shirt, I'd sweat as we walked and feel the sharp arms of those saints poking at me through the canvas. I wasn't carrying her backpack the day we hitchhiked because Esther was sulking since Seneca and I paired up with the boys on the motorcycles. We told her she was beautiful. Lots of boys would like her. Maybe we said, just put away the toys. We'd walked for over an hour and hadn't seen a car. Even the air way up on the highway smelled of sand. The sky was purple black as we walked on an overpass over some city I didn't bother to ask the name of. We left Sevilla, a day ago? Moorish archways of perforated stone, buildings that had stood for centuries, fragile as lace. Now we were along a cliff with no guardrails, 50, maybe 100 feet above blinking lights of houses, and then further out, the sea. When the car came around the curve, the headlights flashed twice. A blue sedan, an old one with wingtip fenders. "I can help you girls out," the driver said, or maybe he said something else. My Spanish wasn't great, but I understood the knife. My brother had one from the Marine Corps, a K-bar, squat leather handle, 7-inch black metal blade. A sour smell of whiskey came from inside the car, from behind his chapped lips. "We'll just have to think of what you can do to thank me." The man said something like this and opened the driver's side door wide so we could see the knife in the headlights, so it would be hard to get around him. Esther backed up closer and closer till the heels of her sandals were right on the top of the cliff. I looked up the road beyond the moon-white headlights. We could run, but he'd just catch us in the car. My knees locked. I felt woozy. Seneca's shoulders hunched up for a minute. Then she began to drag the toe of her sandal along the gritty rock. "I'm sure we can think of something," she said, and licked her lower lip. The man's face melted. He drummed the hub of the knife handle against his thigh. I couldn't look at Esther, who I was pretty sure was still a virgin, couldn't think about those fingers touching any of us, or if Esther would jump if it came to it. I couldn't think what Seneca was doing, acting like we were going to go along with this guy and his long body and his sly face. Then all of a sudden I thought maybe she was tired, like I was tired of waiting for this to happen, tired of defending against it. "Can you get it?" my mother would say at this point, and open up the drambuie, and the room would fill with the smell of honey and cloves. Sitting in the kitchen in our small house in Michigan, I'd think I didn't get it. But then, like a hypnotic suggestion, I'd feel the tiredness seeping through me. I'd think about how I've been tired since elementary school, junior high, since sleepovers, since watching the news, since attending the How Not to Get Raped training at freshman orientation last year. My mother would put her glass on the table and start talking again. Seneca pulled her shirt down off one shoulder, so I just straightened up my body and stuck my ass out a little to show how it filled up my jean shorts. I thought maybe it wasn't as bad if you invited it in, leaned in the way I'd heard a woman in a documentary say she'd done when she'd been raped, how she just locked her face on his eyes and forced herself to see him as a little boy who just wanted love. When my mother told this part of the story, I always wondered how the woman from that documentary was doing now, if she'd managed to hold on to the compassion, the transcendence, or if she was just totally fucked up. And I think she was probably totally fucked up in how I was and how we all were. "He went for Seneca first," my mother would say. Men always did. I always got so tense at this part of the story, thinking about Seneca and her long brown hair and her piano-playing fingers that I'd seen in my mother's photo albums. "He never saw Esther coming," my mother said. And that's how I imagine they found him. His car door still open, Casilda of Toledo jutting from the side of his neck, the keys in the ignition, the engine in park, idling in the night. Thank you.
Sarah, that was just wonderful. I have to say, I mean, I have been in classes, writing classes with both Sarah and Allison, and it was such a pleasure. And I'm so happy for them that they have like gone forward and, you know, are publishing. But it was a coincidence to have you both here. But Sarah, I always loved, you know, what you wrote. And so it's just wonderful that you're here right now. So thank you so much. And those were two just amazing stories. And I feel like you really expressed let's call them the difficulties of being a woman, the objectification, the dangers that are sort of around every corner. Anyway, very nice. And thank you for being here. Yes. And so our final reader is Ignatius. And so I will now introduce him. So Ignatius is our good friend. He's a wonderful co-curator. And he launched his novel Fishhead, Republic of Want, in January of 2020. There it is. It's Tortoise Books. He earned his MFA in creative writing from Northwestern University. And in fact, three of four writers tonight have MFAs from Northwestern. And that was a coincidence too, but it's sort of fun. He at Northwestern University, where he is a lecturer at the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. He is also the author of the Imaginal Stage. Did I say that right? Okay. A doom sludge metal album by Wound, WOOND, his studio project on mental illness recordings, Iowa City. Ignatius was selected as a 2020-2021 Creative Writing Fellow by the Ludington Writers Board and the Ludington Area Center for the Arts in Michigan. Ignatius serves as a judge for the Evanston Arts Council's Cultural Fund Grants Application Program. He sits on the curatorial board at Ragdale Foundation, and he is also a member of its Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Task Force. Ignatius lives with his wife in Evanston and is currently at work on his next novel and album. Learn more about him at ignatiusaloysius.com. Ignatius.
Thank you, Natalia, so much. Thank you. And thanks,
Thanks for being
Betsy.
here.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to, before I begin, to say thank you so much for supporting Sunday Salon. We have just enjoyed coming out of COVID this entire year, hosting every month. And it is so wonderful to have your support and your love and to keep this going. And we enjoy it. And we enjoy it so much. We can't even tell you. With that in mind, I just want to say that the novel, The Fishhead Republic of Want, takes place in Chicago and in India. And it is narrated by the omniscient voice, first-person voice of destiny. And it takes place in a tenement in Bombay. And the family is about to have dinner. And it is part of a chapter called Greeting Cards. Enjoy it. Fishhead waited patiently while Mom began serving. The aroma of spices and simple ingredients pinched his stomach, but would it be enough? He stood at 5'8", too thin in his arms and wrists, with uncut black hair falling across his forehead and spilling over the tops of his ears, and high cheekbones and deep-set brown eyes that showed his desire to live a better life than the one fate presented him. He wore shorts and an old, oversized t-shirt, almost 14, a middle child who adored the sun, who loved being outside past sundown, a growing boy, but ashamed. Dad had started a new business in this dump, making hand-painted holiday cards. He'd purchased paint, brushes, pencils, erasers, glue, and blank cards, and he lined them up against the blank wall. Fisher did his best to ignore the abundant array of brand new art supplies. He turned his attention instead to this meager feast. Never enough food for this family of 7. He knew he would go to sleep hungry. I must pause here and point to this intrigue in Fishhead's paradoxical nature. A youth caught at the crossroads of survival, feet planted in the median and unwilling to move, as if I, life's cobbler, had nailed inertia to the soles of his feet. Let me repeat, dear reader, that his eyes burned with desire for a better life than the one he faced. These patterns of inaction and vitality are complex and transferable from parent to child, I confess. Well, is that the case here? Rebellion might suggest an opposite suit of actions, but in fact, it resembles its origins. And yet, Fishhead must be careful. What patterns of behavior is he taking from his parents as he approaches adulthood? Since I am the mastermind of time and a purveyor of the instant in which all feeling and production transpires, I am most interested in how Fishhead lives in the present. I am interested in how he filters this moment rather than how he keeps tasting the past, the salt of the family's fatigue and failure on his tongue. He might never understand his family's reason for existence, and yet he has come from it and is a part of it. Destined for new motivations, his own republic of want, sugar and rice, chawal or chini. We shall see. The boy is ashamed and desires a better life than this one, better one than which I have presented him. But it's this moment that parenthesizes the hour of divinity, the dream of love and fate in the instant, which moves in one direction, forward, never back. Perhaps you will see love elsewhere and know destiny with a kind of intimacy unavailable here. What you hold in your hands and in your vision is, just as Fishhead holds in his hands and in his vision, a breath of anticipation and expectation. Let us proceed. A train approached the station on the other side of the wall, as if just outside the front door. A demon at the door. Lily, now 6, covered her ears and whined. She, the last child and only girl, skin like smooth, dark chocolate, a beauty in the dumps who resembled her attractive father more than any other sibling. Mom hadn't wanted Lily, but she'd carried and delivered her, choiceless by tradition, by culture, choiceless in a country steeped in convention, ritual, and customs as ancient as seawater. Now Mom and Dad sat apart from each other, saying little to each other as usual. Lily had become Father's pet. Dad had wanted a girl. Dad had wanted a girl badly, and now she took her place beside him. Balan George, father, a dark and handsome man, heckless, guileful. The slight glint of silver in his hair showed his advancing age, but his handsomeness had long ago ceased being an asset to the family, cursed, his goatee like a garden shoot, cursed. Mom spooned the curried mackerel pieces and soup over cooked rice on 7 tin plates, most of them dented from use. Fish had kept his eyes on her as she served the best pieces of fish to his father and older brothers. Lily and Kishore each got the cooked eggs. Lily also got a tail section, the part with the least bones. Mom gave Fishhead the other tail. He nodded when she picked up a head and offered him one. You like the heads, Mom said. Fishhead lifted his plate to receive the mackerel from her, and he took the extra tail she'd served him and put it on her plate instead before she could protest. You know I do, he answered. I know. No one will eat the heads. Nasty, Prem said. That's for the crows, Pradeep, and added, caw, caw. Lily giggled. Fishhead smirked. He looked up to his oldest brother most of the time, but not now. Then Mom and I are crows, he answered. I'll eat the eyes too, like this, look. Fishhead put the head in his mouth, crunching slowly and slurping the juices, sucking it all up with his tight cheeks and lips pushed out like a fish. He chewed the eyes, gills, cheeks, and bones. Tell him to stop that, Papa, Lily cried. Your mother named you Fishhead when you were young, Balan said, looking at his wife, Ejma. But you don't have to show it off. He cleared his throat, unwilling to discuss the matter further. Fishhead thought Dad might strike him in front of everyone. Slowly, he swallowed the juices and spat out the pressed bones in his hand, easing them out gently. He placed them on the edge of his plate, then he slurped a little bit again. Does he have to do that? Balan said to his wife. His eyes narrowed, and his eating hand turned into a fist. Fishhead stopped eating. Mom reached for his arm. Don't upset your father, she said. Fishhead studied his plate and said nothing, head down. Only sleep promised relief from the uncertainties of the day, and he longed to find his place on the hard floor once everything had been put away and the room cleaned, transformed into the family's bedroom, office. Close his eyes, close them, and drift away. All seven slept in rows on sheets, pushed up against each other in the heat, with the front door latched tight. The curtain on the window overlooking the front balcony hung there, unmoving. It failed to keep the mosquitoes away. Just after sunrise, Fishhead woke up to the sound of Mom's voice as she prepared to leave for work. He stirred when Mom leaned in, her face about 2 feet from him. Help your father, she said, pressing down on his right shoulder. I promise I'll make us cakes. He rubbed his eyes, nodded, and watched his mother make her way to the front door. The rings around her eyes, those sinking cheeks. He knew her good work habits: be on time, never miss your train, work hard, work as long as someone tells you what you should do. He got to his feet, drowsy but encouraged by his mother's words. That could get him through the day. Dad sketched roughly, with stacks of holiday cards next to his feet. He let Prem and Fishhead complete his sketches and make them tighter on the cards. Fishhead liked this part, at least. He was starting to enjoy figurative drawing. Dad sketched the nativity scene with the Holy Family, animals, a shed with a roof, candles aflame glowing in a lightless night. He arranged the cards in order, some finished with holiday images, others near completion. He had cards with white envelopes ready for sale, blank cards too, stacked in boxes against a wall behind the chair. But where did Dad get the money for all these? The investment stretched the family's limits thin. By lunchtime, the apartment became unlivable, with scraps of art materials and cut paper scattered everywhere, slivers of wasted broom pieces dropped and ignored like confetti, splotches of paint and glue smeared on the hard floor. Dad didn't seem to care if the floor became a canvas, so long as the fishing cards piled up ready for sale. But Dad's project needed salespeople too, and Fishhead hated this part of the perfect plan most of all. On Dad's command, he and Kishore cleaned up, but did not take their baths. Meanwhile, Prem and Lily continued to watch, learn, and be of assistance as Dad put the finishing touches on his cards. Fishhead waited patiently. Then, long past lunchtime, Dad filled up an old cotton sling bag with the finished cards. Sell everything and come straight home, Dad said. And be careful, don't lose the money. That will be your lunch money. And if you do well, dinner too. Fished left with 60 handmade cards and envelopes in the cloth bag slung across his shoulder. He took Kishore with him, and they had just enough cash for their commute, nothing more. Hot off the press, a bag that reeked of glue, paper, and poster paint. The price of each card, 5 rupees. No one had ever taught the boys how to sell anything door to door. Fish had, embarrassed and awkward about his family's condition, knew it would not be an easy job, not an easy job at all. They boarded the commuter train from Chembur, and within 45 minutes had reached Bandra, a posh suburb on the western coastline of the city. Fished knew little of the area except for its famous week-long festivities and crowded processions with the statue of Mother Mary, which he'd attended with Mom and his siblings. They left Bandra station and tramped on for a quarter mile or so west in the high heat until they reached a bend in the main road. To their left, the walls of the Jesuit church and school. The road forked. They took the street that veered off to the right and followed that to the rich homes and apartments, a quieter tree-lined section of the suburbs. Hurry up, Fish had said, or we'll lose time. Big Brother kept having to wait for Kishore to catch up with him, walk faster. Wet armpits, backs, the day's heat, beads of sweat piling up on their foreheads, raining down their cheeks. They knocked on every door, entered every apartment building, climbed up to every floor. They tried it again and again and again, going from building to building and home to home. Gates with latches and bells, houses with dogs and without. They went knocking on doors to sell their cards, sell, 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 and all the while hunger gnawed and twisted. Fish had remembered to drink water whenever they could find it in corner cafes and from street vendors. No roadside well or pump inside here. One resident offered them water, but did not need the cards. By 5 o'clock in the evening, they had sold 43 cards, but the trek had weakened their knees and legs, leaving them dizzy, parched, life like a desert. Please, can we eat something? Kishore said. We'll eat later, Fish had answered. Keep going, let's keep going. Dad will count the money. He led Kishore home on the train. They reached the tenement before sunset, glad to be back, but desperately hungry. Inside, they emptied their bags before Dad. Lily and Prem came closer to take a look. Dad was busy, paintbrush in hand, a glass near him, not water. How did you do? He asked at last, tugging at his singlet. I'm hungry, Kishore said. We sold a lot, Fish had said, his mouth dry. How many is a lot? 43. You didn't sell everything. That's a lot, Fish had said. Dad paused. Go help your brother in the kitchen, he said at last. Fish had handed over the cash but stood looking on. Dad counted every rupee and paise, 215 in all. He dropped the coins in a shoebox and stood up. He folded the notes and put them in his pocket. Fish had stepped aside, confused. The work stopped, just stopped without rhyme or reason. Had Dad been waiting for the money all day, all week? Lily began gathering up the unfinished cards, and Prem swept his cupped hands across the floor to clean it, picking up at the edges of the paint and glue splotches. Get a wet cloth from the bathroom, Dad said. Then he raised his glass to his lips and emptied it, his moonshine, Aveda Sharab, slipped on a shirt, buttoned it. He made his way to the front door. I'll return shortly, he said. Don't mess up the new cards. Something stirred inside Fishhead, begging mutiny. As he watched Dad leave, He knew in his heart that life would get worse before it improved. He knew Dad would send him out with Kishore again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Sell, sell, sell. Get your experience on the job, on your feet, in your empty stomach. And he knew too that he would do it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
That, Ignatius, that was so moving. And I want everybody to know that I'm the one, because I loved Fishhead, Republic of Want so much, I had to work really hard to convince Ignatius to read tonight. He didn't want to look as though he were, using our series for his ends. And I think you can all see what a beautiful, you can hear and you heard what a beautiful book it is. And so I'm so glad you read. And I'm so glad that everyone knows now, like, it's such a moving and compelling work, a novel. It really is.
Thank you.
So I'm just so glad you read. And thanks to Sarah, to Allison, to Esther, and also to you, Iggs. And it was just such a pleasure. You guys took us all over the world in all different sorts of strata of class and, just cultures. Such a rich night, and it's all thanks to you. So we will have a reading in June, and it's going to be June 27th, Sunday, June 27th.